intrusive thoughts are so common when we are talking about anxiety, when we are talking about anxiety disorders. They feel like hell. They repeat over and over, one on top of the other, and they are triggered by different things. But the most important thing is you don't choose them to be there. Never. You never trigger anxiety in existence. So they can be something super irrational but super hard to process. Like, for example, you see a knife and think like, what if I do something to myself? What if I harm myself? Then you read something in the news, for example, about a crime or something bad that happened, and then you're imagining how it can happen to you, or even worse, how you can commit a crime. Or you are standing in a high place and think, okay, so what if I jump? And those feelings can be mild, they can be strong, but again, you do not choose them. It's important to understand that having those thoughts does not mean that you will act on them. In most cases, they are harmless, horrible, but harmless. Even though that sounds really weird, but they don't reflect you. They don't reflect your real desires or intentions. When we are talking, of course, about anxiety and anxiety disorders. It's not something you control. Though through time and work, you can learn to kind of control them, sometimes even take them away. So why are they there? Well, exactly for you to be scared, to feel guilty, to feel ashamed, to make you question your own sanity. You start developing scenarios where you're taken into a hospital, losing touch of reality. But in reality, they're more like symbols. They mean something completely different. They are a type of communication. They communicate with you, but not what they are saying. Yeah, it's kind of complicated, no? But what can make you feel better is that what research shows is that many individuals experience those intrusive thoughts at some point in their life, even without having any disorder, any anxiety disorder, nothing at all. They can just happen. So they come to you because you are hyper vigilant. You have a strong sense of threat. So you are constantly searching for potential dangers. So, for example, when you hear like the slightest sound in the house and your adrenaline punches, and then you start thinking that it's somebody breaking in, that something horrible is going to happen. And the worst part is that it makes you feel pretty, crazy, because you know the fears are not real, but they are still very intense. So they, on one hand, exist as completely rational, real thing, but on the other hand, completely are not rational and not real. All that has a name, and that is the way you can see how actually common it is. It's called cognitive dissonance. It happens when there is a conflict between what you know to be true and what you feel in the moment. Yeah, and it can be incredibly scary and incredibly frustrating. Not dangerous though. But what can you do about these symptoms? It's essential, of course, to seek professional help from a therapist so that you don't go through that alone. And because, why would you go alone? It's horrible enough that it's happening. It's worse that it's a secret. And the worst of the worst is that it's completely invisible. It can be happening and nobody will know. And it's not like people go and talk about, hey, I saw a knife, I thought about harming myself. Well, will I harm myself? It's not something that actually we communicate. Though we should, because when we do, we see that many people around us think similarly and actually go through the same stuff. So one of the techniques is can be found in cognitive behavioral therapy. They identify and challenge negative thoughts and negative thought patterns. So they help you like reframe your thinking and develop some coping mechanism. So they are kind of a first step. What they say when what to do when the thought comes, you ask yourself, is it realistic? For example, I want to harm myself. Okay, so is that realistic? And if, of course, anxiety says, yeah, but it could be, then you say, okay, but my experience tells me that I never had those kind of thoughts, that I never did anything similar. And that will predict my future behavior. So you basically question until it winds down a bit. Be patient, put yourself in a role of a modern day Freud, analyzing what's behind the symptoms, because they're just symptoms. But being in a role can help. It's on one hand, it's a game, so it will take you out from that pattern, and on the other hand, it can really give you that perspective, looking from the distance, from the side. But of course, it takes time and it takes practice. I would advise you to be very patient with yourself throughout this process, to surround yourself also with supportive network of friends, family. Actually, as I said, if you start talking about it, you will see how many of them are facing or have faced the same. And for the end of our coffee, I want to be super clear. You're not defined by those thoughts. You have the power to reclaim control over your mental well-being. Anxiety does not change who you are as a person, does not control your traits and your goodness. We are full of conflicts, and those feelings, the positive and the negative, is human. It does not make you bad, it just makes you normal, actually, the opposite of what you would call crazy. So, see you in the next coffee.